Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 6-game NBA slate for today on DraftKings. Not my most favorite slate in the world, but there's a couple of good games on here, and not a lot of value plays, but there's some decent spend up and mid-range options, so we'll be breaking it down. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out, really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets about every single night for the NBA season, I update it all the way up until lock and even after lock. Links in the description below for my Patreon. It's got projections, defensive first position chart, my cheat sheet, Discord chat, my core plays, all that good stuff. Like I said, links in the description below. And without further ado, let's get into today's slate. So I'm not going to talk too much about LeBron and AD. Obviously, they're always in play just because of how good they are. But like I always say, if you have the salary, they're fine plays. If you don't force them in. But as of right now, there's not a lot of great value plays, so it might be really hard to fit in the Lakers studs, but I'll just talk about them briefly. You know, with LeBron, always a good play. He offers you triple-double upside every single night. He's coming off a triple-double recently. He also had a triple-double versus Phoenix, though. 2 of the last 3 games, triple-doubles. That's just what LeBron can do. Elite passer, you know, he can get the rebounds, elite scorer. He can do pretty much everything. We all know that. It's LeBron. And like I said, it's actually a pretty good matchup here versus the Knicks. And they actually struggle versus guards, ranking bottom 5 versus the point guard position. LeBron, not your prototypical point guard, but he pretty much does everything on the court. He plays the role of being a point guard. I really don't care who's guarding him. He'll be fine. And over a 30% usage rate this season, 1.55 points per minute. I'll never tell you to not play LeBron. He is fine no matter the matchup, and he actually draws a good one here. So if you can fit him in, yeah, go for it. If not a big deal. I don't think he's an absolute lock as of right now. Again, if a whole bunch of value opens up throughout the day and it makes him really easy to fit in, then it'll be high owned. But as of right now, I don't expect him to have too much ownership just because of how this roster construction looks as of right now. Same with AD. If you can afford him, yeah, go ahead. If not, it's fine. He's actually been a little bit worse than LeBron this season, only averaging 1.47 points per minute, but 31% usage rate, about the same. But the Knicks are bottom 10 versus the power forward position, whatever you want to call it, Anthony Davis, power forward, center. Either way, matchup proof again. Both these guys matchup proof. Don't really care about the matchups. AD is coming in really good form the past 2 games where he had 73 points and 64 points. Broke that 40-point stretch he was in. And he actually had 8 blocks in the last game, which is absolutely insane. And for a while, he was having a really low-scoring game. He only had, I think he had like 5 points heading into the half, but he ended up scoring a lot in the 4th quarter. And he almost got a triple-double off of blocks. I thought he was going to get there, but they slowed down in the second half. I think he had 6 blocks at the end of the first half, but Anthony Davis, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's got an insanely high upside, 80-point ceiling, to be honest. So if you can fit him in, yeah, go ahead. If not, no biggie. I guess as of right now, if I had to pick between LeBron and Anthony Davis, I'll just give this slight lean to Davis because he's a little bit cheaper, but they're both pretty much the same play. But my favorite spend up of the night as of right now is actually Andre Drummond, who comes in a little bit of a cheaper price tag at $9,700. I do like that he's below $10K. Price did come up a little bit, but that's fine. It's a good matchup versus Cleveland. And again, Blake's going to be out. Kennard's going to be out. Morris is going to be out. You guys get the idea. And he gets an elite matchup here versus Cleveland. They're the 2nd worst overall defense for fantasy points given up just in general. And more individually, they rank 23rd versus centers. And Cleveland also may be shorthanded down low as well. We know Kevin Love missed the game with rest, but I do expect him to be back. But Tristan Thompson's questionable. We know Larry Nance is out. So not going to be too much resistance for Andre Drummond no matter who's out there. And not like Kevin Love's a good defender anyway. So either way, I think Drummond eats on the glass, and honestly, he's got 20-20 upside here. I mean, we know he's a rebounding machine. He had 18 rebounds the past 2 games. Hasn't really been scoring too much, but you know, versus Cleveland, I could definitely see a 20-20 game out of him. He's been at 1.4 points per minute this season, 25% usage rate. He's going to grade out as a really good point per dollar option. He actually grades out as my best point per dollar option of the guys that are way up top. So Andre Drummond, my favorite spend up of the night. I do think we can get a 20-20 game out of him. I'm not saying I'm expecting it, but I definitely think the potential is there for him. So definitely like Andre Drummond. Kyrie Irving, obviously not back yet. Damian Lillard, he's a little bit too expensive for me. I mean, I played him in the last game, but that was because CJ McCollum was out. But I like him when he's in the 8K range. I don't typically like to pay 9K plus for Damian Lillard, so I'm probably going to pass as of right now. Devin Booker, this should be a good game environment considering it's got the 2nd highest over-under on the slate, but I mean, he's fine. He's on fire right now, I will say that. I mean, if you just look at the past few games, 51, 51, 44, 50, 54, 44, really good form right now. He's had 30-plus real-life points in, last 6 games, and I mean, he's on fire right now, and I don't see why that can't continue. It's like okay matchup versus Sacramento. They play really slow, but Phoenix plays fast pace. So I do think this game's going to be a pace-up spot. not pace up spot I should say, but a paced up game. And Vegas would agree because they're, Phoenix is at home. They should look to push the pace here versus Sacramento. Typically play slow, and they do struggle with guards. So I don't think Devin Booker's a bad play. We know he's playing huge minutes. I do like the recent form he's in. Only problem is he is really expensive at 8,800. So probably not going to look his way, but he is on fire right now. I like him when he's in the 7K range, though, or low 8K. So pushing it a little bit at 8,800, I will say that. I'd rather just get up to Lillard for only 400 more. Feel a little bit safer with that. But Kyle Lowry, I actually like Lowry quite a bit here at 8,700. Like, I'd rather play Lowry over Devin Booker. And I know he's got a higher price tag here at 8,700. I typically like playing Lowry when he's in like the low 8K range, which I know we don't get too much, but I still think he's fine because the big thing here is that Fred VanVleet will be out, as well as Siakam. Obviously, he's been out for a while now, but Fred VanVleet will be out. And without those two on the court, he has a 30% usage rate and 1.44 points per minute. 1.44. That is pretty darn elite, especially for this price of 8,700. That's better than Booker's numbers. So I think Booker's only like at 1.15 points per minute. So I'll take the 1.44 point per minute guy. And it's a good matchup versus Portland too, one of the worst defenses in the NFL in the NBA just in general, and they do struggle with point guards individually. 22nd versus the point guard position. So Kyle Lowry, I think he's a very solid play versus a pretty bad defense. And the numbers without Fred VanVleet on the court are pretty darn good. So I do like Lowry. Some Whiteside's fine. I don't love the matchup versus Toronto, but Whiteside's just been so good this season. He's at 1.35 points per minute. But I'm probably going to pass there. I like SERGE IBAKA, though, at 8,300. I think he's a pretty good play versus Portland. Actually, versus Hassan Whiteside, the guy we were just talking about. I mean, he may sound like a good defender, but he's not. Big Ben have been having great games versus Portland all season. I don't see why that can't continue here for SERGE IBAKA. And he's a bit overpriced, I will say that. I was hoping he'd be in the 7K range, so you're going to have to hope for more of a ceiling game from him, but he's been solid the past 4 games, 36, 40, 36, 40. I'd hope for him to get 40-plus points at this price tag, but I do think he can do it. With all those guys off the court, he's averaging a 25% usage rate with 1.1 points per minute. This is an elite matchup down low versus Portland, who's just in general awful defensively. I just touched on that when I was talking about Kyle Lowry. But individually, they're 27th versus center, so one of the worst teams in the league versus big men. So I do think he's a safe bet for around 40 fantasy points. And, he's going to get double-double. 20-point double-double is definitely in the card. So SERGE IBAKA on my radar as of right now. But I got to say, on this slate, there's not a lot of good point per dollar options. So I might have to spend up a little bit more than we would like to on a couple of players because there's not a lot of good cheap guys on this slate, unfortunately. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward a mid-range build with Andre Drummond being my most expensive player. So we'll see how the slate falls, but as of right now, not a lot of great options. De'Aaron Fox is fine at 7,700. Price came down a little bit, although he's had two rough games in a row. In a monster game versus Memphis, which made sense because it was an elite matchup. Unfortunately, the price came up the past 2 games, but it came down a little bit, 7,700. So I'm willing to take a stab here. And it's a pretty good matchup here versus Phoenix. I do think you can have one of those higher ceiling games, and I do like the matchup quite a bit. It's versus a fast-paced Phoenix team who is 8th in pace of play, while Sacramento is 27th, so it's a huge pace-up spot for the Kings here. An elite matchup, too, as Phoenix is bottom 10 versus guards, and also we know that Bogdanovic is going to be out. I'm pretty sure he's going to get traded. They say he's got an illness. I believe, aren't they trading him for Kyle Kuzma? I believe so. That's what I heard. But either way, Bogdanovic, Rashawn Holmes is questionable, and then Marvin Bagley is going to be out again. So just quite a few guys out for the Kings. So obviously, De'Aaron Fox is going to get a little bit of a bump there. And without those guys on the court, he gets a 3% usage bump, and he's at 1.15 points per minute on the season. And as of right now, we have a 226 total, which is the second highest on the slate, just behind the Memphis game. So De'Aaron Fox, 7,700, not a bad price tag. Going to get 30-plus minutes in this game. I think he's got I think he can get you 40 points in this game with upside of more. So De'Aaron Fox, not a bad play in my opinion. You could also look at Kevin Love at 7,500. So I know he missed the last game with rest, and he played terribly. 12 points, 3 rebounds, and he was visually upset. You saw him. He's throwing his hands up on the court. But I think he can bounce back here for Detroit. I think they make it a point to get him the ball here. And Thompson's questionable, and Nance is out, and running the numbers with them off the court. Love is at 1.44 points per minute, which is fantastic for this price tag. He also has a 32% usage rate, so it's pretty darn good if you ask me. And it's a really good matchup versus Detroit, as they really struggle with power forwards, ranking 26th versus the position. So Kevin Love, if he's in, you can look his way. I assume he'd be in, so don't mind him whatsoever. I know the last game was rough, but I think he'd be a safe bet for 40 fantasy points, if not more, if Tristan Thompson happens to be out. Van Vliet's out. We already talked about that. You could look OUBRE's way in tournaments. The guy's been hot. I actually don't remember how he did the last game. 36, that's actually not too bad. The guy's been fantastic, though, recently. 36, 45, 45, 49, 53. Past, like, 5 games, he's been great, playing huge minutes right now. So Kelly Oubre's fine in tournaments, but don't love playing OUBRE. I think I played him, like, once this season, which I guess sounds like a mistake, because he's been doing great, but just not a fan of really paying 7K plus for Kelly Oubre. Valanciunas at 7,200. He's a little bit of an iffy guy. He can have low floor games, so he can also have really high ceiling games. Doesn't play huge minutes, though. Won't typically break 30 minutes, but he's really good on a point per minute basis. I believe he's at 1.2 points per minute on the season. Had a huge game last time out versus Phoenix at 52 fantasy points. Not really expecting to get 52 here versus Minnesota, but this is the highest total on the slate. It's going to be a fast-paced game. Both teams are top 8 in pace of play. Minnesota is the fastest pace of play team, which is actually a pace-up spot for Memphis, which we don't get too often. So Valanciunas, he's fine in tournaments. Don't love the price tag. I prefer if he was in that 6K range. They need to get a price bump, but he can get you a double-double, and he's capable of getting 50-plus points. He's done it multiple times this season. I think we've seen him drop a 60-point game, but a little bit of an iffy play. He does have a lower floor, 27 points, 32, but he's got a higher ceiling as well. So don't mind Valanciunas in tournaments. Probably wouldn't play him in cash games, though. Buddy Hield, he's fine versus Phoenix. He comes in at 7K, and he's on a hot streak for right now. 34 points, 47, 42, 35, 44, 34, playing really well. Then the games before that, he was cold, so I do like that he's in good form as of right now. He's playing huge minutes, and also, Bogdanovich is going to be out, Bagley, Holmes, just more minutes to go around in usage. And he's a point per minute guy playing huge minutes, so got a high 226 total, and Phoenix does really struggle versus the guard position. I already talked about that when I was talking about De'Aaron Fox, so I think Buddy Hield, I think he's a pretty solid play, so I don't mind him. The prices, I like him when he's in the 6K range, but 7K is not too bad, especially versus Phoenix. Going to get a lot of shots up. Buddy Hield definitely on my radar. Jaren Jackson, you can look his way in tournaments. You can just look for anybody in this game, to be honest. Minnesota versus Memphis, it's the highest over on the slate. 2 terrible defenses. Pretty much everyone's in play in that game. Andrew Wiggins actually versus Memphis, actually probably one of my favorite plays on this slate. Absolutely love him. I can't remember the last time he was in the 6K range, but I will look to take advantage here. I mean, if you just look at his last 4 prices, 7,300, 7,800, 8,400, 7,800. Now he gets a really good matchup versus Memphis, and they drop his price because I'm not really sure why. But I like it. I like the game environment here. Should be great. Both teams are top 8 in pace of play. Minnesota being the fastest. We have also really 2 bad defensive teams right now. And especially Memphis, though, they rank 4th worst in the NBA for defense and fantasy points given up just in general. And they actually rank dead last versus shooting guards and 24th versus small forwards. So it's a good matchup either way for Andrew Wiggins. And we also have to assume that Towns will be out. I don't see him coming back anytime soon, it seems like. And without him on the court, Wiggins has a 30% usage rate, 1.09 points per minute. He had a tight 3-point spread, 228 total. All makes sense for Andrew Wiggins to have a good game here below 7K. He's going to play all the minutes he can handle. So I think Andrew Wiggins is a fine play. Grades is a really good point per dollar option as well. You could also look at Chris Paul here. He's the same price as 6,900. Love the matchup for Chris Paul. And he got a random price drop, so he was in that 7K range for a while. Then they put him below 7K at 6,900, but I look to take advantage here. I like buying guys low, and there's really not a reason that Chris Paul's price should have dropped too much. He should be like a 73, 7,500 player. So 6,900 seems a little bit too cheap, and he does a fantastic matchup here versus Brooklyn, who really struggles with the point guard position, ranking 27th versus the position. Also, a really nice pace-up spot here for the Thunder. OKC is one of the slowest paced teams in the league. They play at the 26th fastest pace of 26th team in pace of play, I should say that. And Brooklyn is 6th, so it's a huge pace-up spot here. And he's been fine this season. He's got a 21% usage rate, 1.1 points per minute. Not elite, but his price isn't elite, so I think he's a fine play at 6,900. Love the matchup. Definitely look to get him in if you need a mid-range guy. I really like Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins, both rating out as pretty good point per dollar options in this price range for me on today's slate. SGA is fine, kind of the same play as Paul, but I prefer Paul. Gorgie Dang, I just can't trust this guy. Even if Towns is out, he's priced way up, 6,800, and every time I play him, he just absolutely screws me. And see, I didn't play him in the last game versus Cleveland, and he goes off 57 points. I'll show you the guys I played. I'll show you guys the games I played Gorgie Dang in. Didn't play him versus Cleveland. Obviously, he smashes. Golden State, I played him, 16 points. I played him versus Milwaukee, 26 points. Didn't play him versus Brooklyn, 48. Played him versus Cleveland. He only got 25 points that time. Just go figure. Didn't play him versus Sacramento. He got 48. And then I think I played him versus Golden State in Portland, if I remember correctly. But most of the time, when I play him, he sucks. When I play him, he sucks. When I don't play him, he goes off. That's just what it is. But at 6,800, I'm going to pass. I'm going to have to pass just because he's a little bit of an up or down guy. And I don't trust him to get 50-plus points 2 games in a row. So, going to pass on Gorgie Dang, but just know since I'm not playing him, he'll probably get 60 fantasy points. But he's pretty good when Towns is off the court just by a number standpoint, 1.24 points per minute. So the numbers suggest he'd have a good game, but I just can't trust him personally. You could look John Morant's way just in GPPs if you want exposure to this Memphis-Minnesota game, but I'm not going to talk about every single player in this game. I see McCollum now as the questionable tag. See, I thought he was probable, but they now have him listed as questionable with an illness. So if he misses the next game, I know he missed the last game versus Miami, and that's why I played Damian Lillard. So if he's out, I mean, you might want to play Lillard at 9,200. I don't hate it. Not a great matchup versus Toronto, but if McCollum's good to go, 6,700 is not a bad price for him, and Fred VanVleet out for the Raptors is definitely a nice bump for a guy like CJ McCollum because that's who Fred VanVleet would be on, and he's a great defender, so would be a bump to McCollum. I believe Toronto is 17th versus shooting guards anyway, so it'd be a pretty decent matchup for McCollum. He's about a point per minute guy, 6,700, not a bad price tag if he's good to go. Don't mind it, going to play all the minutes he can handle. Probably a safe bet for 35-plus fantasy points, so McCollum will be on my radar, but as of right now, he is listed as questionable, so we'll have to monitor that injury news throughout the day. Steven Adams, he's actually guarding out as a really good option for me at 6,600. Pretty good in the point per dollar department. Yeah, point per dollar department as well. And he absolutely smashed last night in a really tough matchup versus Philly. 15 boards, 24 points, 49 fantasy points. Had a fantastic game, and he's 300 cheaper than he was last night. And he's looking like a really good play as well. Gets a really good matchup versus Brooklyn. Big pace-up spot like I already talked about with Chris Paul. And they really struggle with big men. They are 26 versus the center position. We just saw Vucevic get 24 rebounds last night versus this Brooklyn team. So I don't think Steven Adams is going to get 26 rebounds, but I think he can get 15 or 16 and get 20 points again, and I think he can have a 40-plus point fantasy point outing. He's pretty good in the point per minute department, 1.12 points per minute. And when he's playing well, he'll get extended minutes. He typically plays about 30 minutes per game, but he played 35 last night versus Philly. Now, it is a back-to-back, so that could be a little bit concerning about his minutes, but I think he'll be fine either way. So Steven Adams, definitely on my radar. Does great out as a really good point per dollar option and a great matchup versus Brooklyn. Derrick Rose, 6,400. I do have some interest there. A lot of good mid-range options is what I'm saying on this slate. So I really don't think you have to pay up top dollar for LeBron or Anthony Davis. I do like Drummond quite a bit, so, and he's not that expensive, I should say. 9,700 is not too bad. So that's probably the highest I'm going to go as of right now, but we'll see. I do think Rose is a pretty good GBP play on this slate. He had a 38% usage rate in the last game, had a fantastic game, 28 points, 3 boards versus the Lakers, 5 assists, 1 block, 1 steal, 43 fantasy points, not too bad. Did get a price bump, and he actually did start the second half over Tim Frazier, if I remember correctly. And with all the guys off the court that are going to be projected to be out for the Pistons, Markieff Morris, Blake Griffin, Luke Kennard, he averages a 34% usage rate and 1.34 points per minute. Not that bad at all. Now, he doesn't play huge minutes, but he'll play about 25, 30 minutes on most nights. And if you're going to be 1.34 points per minute, I'll take it. That's not too bad. And he gets an elite matchup versus Cleveland, who ranks 29th versus guards, and they're just the second worst defensive team this year for fantasy points given up to just all positions in general. So Derrick Rose, 6,400. Don't mind some cheap Pistons exposure. Drummond kind of he doesn't break the bank, but he's very expensive. So if you want to go a little bit more mid-range, Derrick Rose, I think he could be a really good play. And at 6,400, I don't see him having too much ownership on this slate. Rashawn Holmes, he's questionable. He left last night's game and did not return. Tristan Thompson's questionable. We got a whole bunch of questionables right here. Blake Griffin's out. Marcus Morris questionable. Tristan Thompson questionable. Let's see if they updated his status yet. Okay, it's still questionable, so we'll see. But Marvin Bagley's going to miss this game. Napier, if you just want exposure to this Minnesota-Memphis game, but he's kind of priced up, but he's been playing well. Jared Allen, OKC actually does struggle with big men. You could look his way, but I don't want to talk about every single 6K player in this price range. I feel like I've talked about a lot of them, but there's just a lot of good plays in that 6K range. Allen's fine in GPPs. You guys get the idea. Karis LeVert is supposed to be back, I believe. Yeah, he's going to be ready to go for Tuesday. So kind of ruins the Spencer Dinwiddie if you wanted to play Dinwiddie, but I really didn't want to anyway. But LeVert's back. He's probably getting about 25 minutes when I expect him to be full go for this game. So that'll be exciting to see him come back. Colin Sexton, not the biggest fan, even though I'm a Cavs fan. Not a huge fan of the guy, but when he's all right scoring-wise, but not a great actual point guard. Let's see, scrolling down a little bit. Bielitsa, I think that's how you say his name. I have a hard time pronouncing this guy's name. Bielitsa. either way, Rashawn Holmes is questionable. Marvin Bagley's going to be out. Bogdan Bogdanovic, I believe, is going to be out. So you could look his way with all those guys off the court. He's over a point per minute. And we got a pretty decently high total, second highest total in the slate, 226. And he's not a bad option. I don't hate him, but whenever I play him, I got to say, he does not have that great of games. I know he's had a couple of upside games this season. He had a 41-point game versus Denver. And I believe he had a 50-point game at one point. Not a great play, but I think he can get you over 20 fantasy points at 5,300, maybe about. So let's say he gets about 30 minutes tonight with all the injuries. I think he can get you 30-plus points, maybe pushing it a little bit, but at 5,300, not the worst play in the world. Good matchup versus Phoenix, so don't hate him. Don't love him either, but it's not a bad play. I see, scrolling down a little bit. Jay Crowder, again, if you just want exposure to this game, I know he had that really high ceiling game where he had 62 or 64 points versus, I believe it was the Clippers. Not going to happen again, but he's fine at 5K. Don't mind. He's like a 0.85 point per minute kind of guy. Not great, but I actually don't mind Dillon Brooks, though. You get exposure to this game, and he is pretty cheap at 4,900. He does have a 23% usage rate, and he's just below a point per minute on the season, but really like this matchup for him. He's not going to play huge minutes, but if he can push for 30, I think he can get you about 30 fantasy points. Really good matchup here versus the T-Wolves. It's going to be a really fast-paced game. I think that suits him well. He's going to put up a lot of threes, put up a lot of shots. So Dillon Brooks, as long as he's hitting the shots, I think he can have a pretty good game here at 4,900. He does grade out as a pretty good point per dollar option as of right now. So you could look Dillon Brooks' way in cash or GPP, in my opinion. Minutes won't be huge, but I think he'll be fine on a point per minute basis. And really, that's it. I'm going to talk about a few more guys, but there's just really not a lot of great options on this slate, I will say. This guy, so I know who he is. I don't know how to pronounce his name, to be honest. I'm not even going to try. But I do think he's an okay play. I like the minutes he's been getting recently. 27 minutes, 38 minutes, 34 minutes. In the last 3 games, 27 points, 40 points, 19 points. Not too bad. I would expect him to get about 30 to 33 minutes in this game, which should be enough to get the job done here versus Cleveland. He's about a 0.8 point per minute guy, and with everyone off the court, 0.81 points per minute, so really not making too much of a difference. And really the only time he's played is with all these guys off the court, so I guess it'd be the same numbers either way. But it's a really good matchup versus Cleveland. They obviously suck defensively. They suck down low. They suck versus forwards. No matter what, I think he's a pretty fine play. He's going to give me 30-plus minutes. Don't love it, but I think he can get us 20, 25, if not more points. So don't mind it. Maybe you get a cheap double-double. 4,600, not that bad of a play. He does grade out as one of the best point per dollar options on the slate, unfortunately. Like I said, there's not a lot of good value options, so it's not that great when he's almost our best value option on the slate. Zizic, I mean, I played him in the last game. He was cheap. I think he was exactly 3K. Yeah, he was the bare minimum. Had a great game, 12 boards, 15 points. 4,600 versus Detroit. Probably going to pass. And he only saw, 25 minutes because Love was out, Thompson was out, and Nance was out. I expect Love to be back. And especially if Thompson's back, you really can't look his way. But if Love's back, you could look for Zizic to get maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but that's just not going to be enough to cut it at 4,600. So not really looking his way. If Thompson's out, John Henson, he will get the start again, and I'd assume he'd play about 20, 25 minutes. Not too bad. 26 fantasy points in the last game, 11 boards, 3 assists, 1 block. But Love was also out in that game, so I really wouldn't expect him to be that effective. Not the greatest matchup down low versus Detroit versus Drummond. But, I mean, he'd be okay, but, again, this doesn't grade out as that great of a play, to be honest. Let's see. Trying to see if there's anyone we can talk about. We could look at Kent Bazemore, and if McCollum happens to miss, we could definitely look his way even more. But the last couple games, he's played 35 minutes, 35, 29. Don't mind the minutes. Now, is he graded on a point per minute basis? Absolutely not. He's only at 0.73 points per minute. But he'll get about 30 minutes. He'll get about 18 fantasy points, and you can pretty much call it a day for that. I mean, if McCollum's out, obviously it's going to be a boost, but really, he's just not that great. He's kind of just a stand in the corner kind of guy. Doesn't do too much, but you could look his way if you're dying for salary relief. 3,800 is not too bad. And really, the only other pump play I could see as of right now, obviously things might open up throughout the day, but if Karl-Anthony Towns is out, you could look Naz Reid's way. He is 3,700. I like this game environment, but he only saw 11 minutes in the last game with Andrew Wiggins being back, so it definitely caps his upside. But he was good when he was in, 20 points, and if you look at the past 4 games, obviously Andrew Wiggins was out, so the minutes are going to fluctuate a little bit there, but 20 minutes, 18, 20, and then with Andrew Wiggins back, he only saw 11 minutes. Gorgie Ding was playing really well, so that was kind of a bad correlation for Naz Reid, but Naz Reid was pretty good when he was in the game as well. Not afraid to shoot threes. He shot 10 threes versus Brooklyn, 7 versus Milwaukee, 6 versus Golden State. took more of a back seat versus that Cleveland game, but in the last game out. But he's been fine. He's actually been at 1.24 points per minute, and he's got like a 25% usage rate when he's on the court. So if Towns is out, not the worst pump play in the world, but it kind of sucks that Wiggins is back for his upside, but I don't mind it. And if Gorgie Deng's playing bad, he'll get more minutes. So that's kind of the correlation. But Nas Reed, not a terrible pump play as long as Towns happens to be out. That's pretty much going to be it for this video, guys. I'm not loving this slate, I got to be honest. I feel like everyone I talked about, I was kind of like, he's not a bad play, but I don't love him. But sometimes that's how the slate goes. But some injury news might open up some more things throughout the day. But I'll leave you guys with that. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Just follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And I'll see you guys in the next video.